Hello everyone. In this video I will review Tesla's record-breaking Q3 China deliveries and I will compare it to previous quarters, global Tesla sales, China's whole BEV and NEV market, BYD's BEV and NEV sales, and Volkswagen Group's BEV sales in China. We will see a lot of interesting sales ratios. Among these we will touch BYD's incredible ramp-up. And also some surprising findings, like Volkswagen is still keeping up with Tesla in China. I have created a Google spreadsheet with 3 sheets and with a lot of charts of which we will go through. There will be a link for this spreadsheet in the description field below the video. The sources of these data are also listed in the sheets. It is mostly from cnevpost.com and tesla.com. As you can see down here. This is our first sheet, and in this sheet I have gathered several types of data for Tesla's China sales as well as data for the whole BEV and NEV market in China. In column C you can see the Model 3 sales in China. These are the actual Chinese sales, export is not included. In column D you can find the same data just in a quarterly breakdown. Columns E and F are the same, just for the Model Y. Then columns G and H are the sum of 3 and Y. The column I, China sales, are the same as column G, but the data is coming from a different source. And in column O, I am checking whether these are consistent or not. In other words, whether these are similar or not. Then we have export in column G, and K is basically the sum of I and G. Here we have to stop for a moment. Chinese governmental agencies often call these wholesale sales, and the media does not always distinguish these from the actual Chinese sales. I have seen that this has led to several misunderstandings. I want to be clear here, because for Tesla, K is closer to the actual production, but now in this video we are only interested about the actual Chinese sales, which is column I and G. We also have China NEV sales in P and Q, and BEV sales in R and S. BEV stands for battery electric vehicles or pure electric vehicles, while NEV stands for new energy vehicles. The term new energy vehicles is a Chinese nomenclature. It consists BEVs, PHEVs or plug-in hybrids, and FCEVs or fuel cell electric vehicles. PHEVs contain normal plug-in hybrids and also extended range plug-in hybrids or EREVs. Okay, so now we can take a look at some interesting charts based on this data. First, let us look at the Model 3 and Model Y quarterly sales in China. The blue bars represent the Model 3 sales quarterly and the red bars the Model Y sales quarterly. As you can see, Model 3 sales mostly stagnated in the last 2 years, while Model Y sales grew significantly. This is natural because Chinese people like SUVs and crossovers just as much as people in other markets. In Q3, Tesla sold about 35,000 Model 3s in China and about 85,000 Model Ys. Now let us look at the combined sales in China. As you can see, Q3 was a new record with about 120,000 sales, but it was only about 4% higher than the previous record in Q4 last year. However, if we compare it to Q3 last year, we get a 63% year-over-year growth. This is not a bad number, but the whole Chinese BEV market grew 93% during the same time period. Just for a second, let us take a look at the BEV and NEV sales ratio in China for the whole market. Personally, I thought that PHEVs will lose market share, but they are actually growing. In January 2021, BEV share was about 84%, while now it is 76%. This is mostly because BYD sells a lot of PHEVs. Now back to Tesla. Let us take a look at Tesla's share in the Chinese BEV market. As you can see, it is slowly shrinking from 16% in Q1 2021 to about 8% last quarter. Between Q3 2021 and Q1 2022, there has been an increase in the ratio, but the overall trend is pointing downwards. Q4 will be very interesting on this chart because Tesla's Chinese production will be somewhere between 250,000 and 300,000, so Tesla can increase Chinese sales a lot as well. However, at the same time, usually everyone has a strong quarter in Q4 every year. Now let us take a look at Tesla's share in the NEV market. Here we can see about the same trend. However, now Tesla's share is only 6.13%. Why do I care about the whole NEV market, the PHEVs as well? The reason is that in China, the PHEVs are special. Most of the PHEVs are made by BYD, and because BYD is making their own batteries, I believe they will be able to convert PHEV production to BEV production quite easily when the demand for PHEVs disappear in the future. If we take a look at those PHEVs that are not made by BYD, most of them are EREVs or extended range electric vehicles. Li Auto is famous about such vehicles. In my opinion, technologically these EREVs are basically BEVs with a decent sized battery, but with an option to have a range extender internal combustion engine which do not connect to the wheels but only charges the batteries. So in my opinion, converting production from EREVs to BEVs will also be very easy. This is why I pay attention to the PHEV sales as well in China. I do not do the same in Europe. In Europe, PHEVs are basically ICE cars supplemented with a smaller battery, electric motors and hybrid tech. Converting those production capacities to BEV capacities seems to be similar to converting pure ICE vehicle production capacity to BEV capacity. In other words, that is not so easy and cheap. Let us jump to our next sheet now. I have gathered Tesla's quarterly China sales data from the previous sheet to column B. This time each row represents a quarter. I have put global sales data to column C. First I have checked the delivery growth on the Chinese market in column D. We can see that in the last 3 quarters it was hovering about 50%. In Q3 the growth was 64%. I have also calculated in column F the ratio between the Chinese and the global sales. As you can see, for a long time it is around 35%. This was a surprise to me. I thought that they are growing faster on the Chinese market than on other markets. The rest of the sheet is a little bit of an off-topic, but I couldn't help myself and I had to compare Tesla's Chinese and global sales to BYD sales. I have gathered BYD's BEV and NEV sales in column G and H, respectively. However, there is an important caveat here. I am not sure whether these are only the China sales or the global sales for BYD. I have used cnevpost.com as a source, and I couldn't figure out from their wording whether this data is the Chinese sales only or the global sales. However, we know that the difference between these two is only 3%. BYD started to report overseas sales since July, so we know that in Q3 overseas NEV sales were about 17,000 vehicles. The sum of these 3 months is about 17,000. Since this is only about 3% of their whole volume, and we do not know how much of these are BEVs and how much PHEVs, we will use the same available BEV and NEV data for the Chinese and the global sales as well in this video. I hope that this will be cleared out in the next months. Okay, so keeping that in mind, let us compare Tesla's and BYD's China and global sales data. With the light blue bars, you can see Tesla's Chinese sales. As we have seen before in the sheet, this is about 35% of their global sales, which are represented by the dark blue bars. BYD's BEV sales are pictured with light red, while NEV sales are pictured with dark red. As I have said before, in case of BYD, we are using the same data for the Chinese and the global sales. On this chart, we can see how fast BYD sales catched up to Tesla. Now in China, they are selling much more BEVs than Tesla. As you can see the difference between the light blue and the light red bars. And they may catch Tesla in the near future on the global market as well, which can be seen by comparing the dark blue and the light red bars. But let us see some BYD Tesla ratios in a more visual manner. First, I have calculated the BYD per Tesla BEV sales ratio in China. As you can see, in Q1 2021, it was 55%. Now it grew to 214%. So BYD in China is selling more than twice as many BEVs than Tesla. What we can also see is we know that Tesla is growing fast, but BYD, even compared to Tesla, grows really fast. It's quite incredible. The real battleground now went to the global market. There BYD is selling 75% of what Tesla is selling, while less than 2 years ago they were at 20% only. It will be interesting to see how these two great companies are fighting. If Tesla loses their first place in deliveries, that will bring an interesting change in their perception. However, we have to note that Tesla vehicles are much more in the premium category than BYD vehicles, and they also have much higher profit margins and financial stability. As I said previously, I think that for BYD it is also important to look at the whole NEV sales, since their PHEV production capacity is very likely easy to convert to BEV capacity when the demand shifts. And we can find the most staggering difference in the Chinese market, where BYD sells no more than 4 times what Tesla sells, while 7 quarters before it was selling less than Tesla. Again, we can say that Tesla is growing fast, but in this period BYD managed to grow almost 5 times faster even compared to Tesla. This is an amazing performance. On the global market, we can see this same 5 times growth compared to Tesla, but here, of course, BYD is only selling 50% more vehicles than Tesla. In our last sheet, we can see a lot of data which we already met in the previous 2 sheets. What is new is Volkswagen Group's BEV sales in China in column K. I was interested in how much they can keep up with Tesla, so I have calculated the Volkswagen Tesla BEV sales ratio in column L. I was surprised that for the last 5 quarters they were mostly able to keep the ratio of about 40%. Q1 2022 was an exception, but usually Volkswagen does not care about good numbers in Q1. They do not rush to deliver all their produced vehicles in that quarter like Tesla does. They only do that in Q4. Compared to the bad news we have received regarding Volkswagen about their software, part shortages and energy crisis in Europe, this 40% sales ratio is quite a good news for them. In the global market, this ratio is getting lower. Earlier there has been reports that Volkswagen cannot sell their BEVs in China because Chinese buyers like smart vehicles. However, this proves otherwise. It is also true at the same time that their software is also getting better slowly. Volkswagen seems to keep up the pace with Tesla. Of course, on the long run, they should increase this ratio if they do not want to be a small company. But at the moment, this is a relatively good news for them. The Chinese market is probably the most important market right now, and I believe it can become more important than Europe and US combined in the future. Also, if somebody is successful in the very competitive Chinese BEV market, they will likely be competitive in other markets as well. Of course, if we compare Volkswagen and BYD BEV sales in China, like I did in column M, we can see a big drop compared to last year. And now they can only sell 19% of what BYD sells. But this will be a topic maybe for another video. And finally, we have arrived to our last chart today. This is just a visual representation about Tesla, BYD and Volkswagen BEV sales in China. Tesla sales are represented with blue and BYD sales with red, as we got used to it already, and Volkswagen BEV sales are represented with yellow. As a summary, we can say that Tesla BEV sales in China are growing at a pace similar to the global market. But the overall Chinese market is even more impressive, especially BYD. Volkswagen is so far keeping up with the pace of Tesla. Q4 will be very interesting because Tesla now has much bigger production capacity in China and Europe is ramping up as well. However, in Q4, every auto company tries to show great numbers. Stay tuned for the sales data in the coming months. Okay, we have arrived to the end of this video. If you liked it, please don't forget to comment, share and give it a thumbs up. And if you like the channel, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.